Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Level Up Your Mental, where I play casual video games and talk about mental health topics. This is something that I am very passionate about, so I just like to come on here and talk about topics that I think that are very important. For today, I'm going to be talking about a couple of myths that I always hear about suicide. I think suicide is a very important topic to talk about, but I feel like a lot of people don't want to talk about it because, it can be intimidating, it can be very hard and challenging to talk about. It's very sensitive. Working in this field, we deal a lot with people that are suicidal, have suicidal thoughts, or just negative thoughts just in general, and it's hard to deal with that. So I just want to educate people and let people know a lot of things that I hear about suicide, what is true, what is not, just to get some clarification. And you guys can definitely join in on the topic in the comments and just let me know if you have any questions or anything else that you guys would like me to talk about. So the first myth that I wanted to talk about that I see a lot is asking someone about suicide will put the idea in their head and make them more likely to kill themselves. This is something that I always hear, and why a lot of people are, skeptical about talking about this when it comes to people in their family, friends, or just in general. But I think it's very important to highlight the fact that we need to educate ourselves on these things, right? We can't be afraid when it comes to certain things to talk about them because we think that the person or whoever we're talking to is going to be influenced and start doing it. Whether we talk about it or not, they're going to see about it. It might not come directly from us, but it might come from the people around them or just from the stuff that they interact with. So when it comes to suicide, it is really important that we talk about it, that we're aware about it, the signs, that people are aware about the people in their lives when it comes to these things, the how to ask questions as far as like making sure that people are good. No, talking to somebody about suicide is not going to make them do it. It doesn't happen that way. It takes a lot. It's a lot of stuff that goes behind it. It takes people a while to even get to that point, and we shouldn't be afraid to talk about this. It's better to educate people so that they're aware and that they know that there's resources around, and also that they know that people are supporting them. The other thing that I hear is talking about suicide is attention-seeking behavior. Now, anybody that is considering suicide, yes, they need the attention in the sense that they need the resources and they need the help. A lot of times people who are going through suicidal thoughts or just dealing with suicide in general, they don't know how to ask for help. I'm not saying it's the best procedure in order for them to get the help, but I've worked in facilities where people are at their lowest and they don't know what to do, and so they will call a hotline, they will call the non-emergency number or whatever, and they will just be like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm really at the brink of having these suicidal tendencies really come forth, and I just need the help. And I feel like it's better to reach out for the help than for them to try to do this in silence, right? So for some people, they just feel like people are doing it just for attention. Now, I'm not saying that there might be some people out there that might use that. That's not the right thing to do. I've heard it before. People, especially in relationships, will use that against their partners, and that's not fair for other people because nobody wants that on them, and it's not right for them to do it that way. But I think for the people who do have these thoughts and they put it out there, it's not for attention seeking. It's more so in the sense of like, I need help right now and I don't know how to do it, and the best way that I know is to reach and seek out for help, right? This is another one that I always hear, and I don't know how this works in other states, but for me, I'm in the state of Florida, and so I always hear people say that if someone tells a professional about their thoughts of suicide, they will be sent to a mental hospital. And in Florida, we have something called the Baker Act, and this is basically for anybody who is currently having any thoughts of wanting to hurt themselves or wanting to hurt other people, and they just don't feel safe. They know that something is going to happen, and you basically are going to either be Baker acted by a professional, like a mental health professional, a counselor, or sometimes the police will do it if they're on the road and they have a house call and someone will tell them, I'm going through all this stuff. They'll come over and they'll ask them, and then if they have a plan and everything, that's when they will write them up under the Baker Act. Now, with the Baker Act, you go to a mental health facility and you are there under a 72-hour hold. That means that you have to see a psychiatrist within that time, and they are going to determine if you are good to leave after the 72 hours or if you have to stay a little bit longer, depending if they put you on medication or if it's so severe that they don't feel comfortable enough to let you go back home or to go back to where you came from, right? And I've worked in a facility like that. That's where I got my first job when I was, starting out with this career. And it was very, very hard because you see people that are going through a lot, and it takes a lot for somebody to be, Baker acted or just be sent to a mental health facility. We can't just go ahead and send someone there. I know for myself and for a lot of counselors that I've been around and a lot of supervisors that I've been under, they tell us the last thing that we want to do is send someone to a mental health facility if they don't need to be there. It could be very traumatizing for people because there's a lot going on there, and it's also scary. You're not around family and friends. You're not allowed to have a lot of things. Phone calls are regulated in the sense that they're around a certain time. There also is a list of people that you can talk to depending on if you're a minor or not. Like it's very structured in the sense of like we're trying to keep you safe and make sure that you're not affected by any outside resources, and that can be a lot for someone who is going through something, maybe even temporarily. Now you break crack them and you send them there and they have the worst experience. So no, when we speak to someone, or I'm going to speak for myself, when I speak to someone and I'm trying to figure out if I need to place them under a Baker Act or actually send them to a mental health facility, I'm asking specific questions, because a lot of times people will say things but they don't actually mean it, or they don't actually have a plan on how they're going to do it. A lot of it is just things that they have on their mind. They're stressed out, they don't know what to do. And there have been situations where yes, I've had to Baker Act people, but this is people who were willing to go, who needed to go, and it was important for them to go, because if not, they probably wouldn't have been here, the next day. So no, we don't just send someone if you're just saying I'm having suicidal thoughts, oh well, I'm going to send you to a mental health facility. It doesn't work like that. You have to have enough evidence to send someone there, and to make sure that with sending them there that it's going to be something that's going to be beneficial for them at the end of the day. The other one that I hear a lot is it is weak or selfish to consider suicide. And this is where the stigma comes in, right? And this is part of the reason why I'm doing this job, is that a lot of people are affected on a regular basis. A lot of people don't know how to deal with the emotions, and this has to do with how they were raised culturally or just their environment in general. And when it gets to a point where you don't know what to do and your family is very biased when it comes to seeking resources and doing things by yourself, the main thing that I always hear is, or one of the things that I always hear is, we have to pray on it and this and that, which I'm not knocking anybody for their religion, but sometimes it takes more than that. And I try to tell people too that sometimes you need more than one resource. You're able to go to counseling and also go to church. Like, us as counselors is not forcing you to do anything. This is all your space and we're just helping guiding you, right? And when it comes to somebody being at their lowest and being, in the depths of their suicidal thoughts, they're not thinking about anybody else at that point. And that's not them being selfish. It's just, I don't want to be a burden to anybody else. I don't want to deal with this stuff. I don't know how to deal with it. And the best solution that I can think about right now is not being on this earth. And it really takes a lot for some people to get there. But if you've been there enough, it's kind of just like, well, this is my end point. And a lot of times they don't speak to the people around them. And so a lot of times people will be like, oh, it's selfish or they're weak. And a lot of it I see is that people are afraid that, people in their families or their friends or just their cultural beliefs and the environment that they're in make them feel bad about having these thoughts when this is their reality. Not everybody can wake up and be able to deal with the stress on a regular basis. Some people, it's very hard for them. And this is why these resources are here. So no, it doesn't make somebody weak. It doesn't make them selfish. At the end of the day, this is their life. And people have to consider that people go through a lot. And if we're not checking on people on a regular basis, it can take a toll on them. They have to know that they have the support. They have to know that it's okay for them to feel the way that they're feeling, but we don't want them to feel like that forever. We want them to use the resources that they have so that these suicidal thoughts are not prominent for them, right? So making people feel that way, it doesn't help, right? The other myth that I hear is that it's easy to tell if someone's thinking about suicide, and this is not always true. I mean, I know as far as myself and what I've seen just in general, people who are going through this are all different. Somebody could be very cheerful one day, then the next day you hear that they, died by suicide, right? Because we also have to change the language when it comes to suicide. You hear a lot of they committed suicide. I mean, they didn't commit a crime. It's not a crime, you know. They died by suicide, and it's important to acknowledge these things so that people are aware, because it could be very it could be very triggering for people and very offensive when we say that they committed, because it's not a crime when it comes to, you know, taking your life. You didn't do a crime in the sense of you're going to be arrested. This is something that you're dealing with mentally and you don't know how to deal with it, and that was the best solution that you could think of. So it's not easy to tell when somebody is going through these suicidal thoughts. Maybe there might be some signs with certain people who, you know, sometimes they seem very happy, and then, you know, in the past couple of days they've been very sad, down the desk, distancing themselves from people, you know, planning things. Sure, those things can happen, but there are other people who can go about their life and you wouldn't even think that anything is wrong. You know, this happened, I think recently, this happened with a couple of famous people where people were shocked, like, oh my God, they were just doing fine. I just saw them the other day, they were smiling and this and that. But we really don't know what's going on with people outside of the interactions that we have with them. You know, a lot of times people suffer by themselves and they choose not to show it to other people, and they show up in the spaces that they're supposed to show up in because they don't want to attract that attention to themselves. And it sucks because you think about it when the person's not here anymore, and you're kind of just like, well, what more could I have done? You know, how could I have supported this person? But in all honesty, it's up to the person to feel comfortable to come and talk to us. And if we never create that space for them to have that, it's going to be very hard for them to be able to come and talk to us, right? So, you know, it's not easy to tell, but I think it's important when you start to notice a difference in your friends, or just in general, you know, just checking in on the people that you love, checking in on your friends is important, so that they know that people are there and that they care for them, and they're not doing this whole entire thing by themselves. You know, life can be challenging and people just want someone around them to support them. The other myth that I see is self-harm is always a sign that someone is thinking about suicide. That there's a difference between someone who wants to commit suicide and someone who is, you know, dealing with self-injurious behaviors, which is cutting. It could be an example. But there's also a thing called non-suicidal self-injuries. These are people who, you know, they are clearly going through something, and the cutting or whatever it is their best solution to relieve their pain. A lot of people will use cutting as a way to be a stress reliever. They say that when, you know, trigger warning, they are saying that, you know, when they cut themselves, it feels like a release, right? They can visually see the release coming out. But in all honesty, the pain is still there. It's kind of the same thing as doing drugs, you know, engaging in, you know, shopping, just things that, you know, help you temporarily, but in all honesty, at the end of the day, it's really not helping you. It's just something to sort of put you in the mindset that you're making yourself feel better, but you're actually hurting yourself. You know, drinking and drinking and drinking your problems away is only doing more damage to yourself than actually figuring out a solution for your problems. It's the same thing with cutting. It doesn't help in the sense of it's not doing anything for you that's going to be healthy at the end of the day. And there's been instances where people will cut themselves and now it's leading them to go to the hospital because they nicked something or whatever the case is. And this is what I mean when I say it's not beneficial, right? So with me working with people that are engaging in these activities, I have to get them to the thought of, you know, this is not something healthy for you to do, and we have to replace this coping strategy with something that is more healthy, right? We have to make sure that you're engaging in something that's actually helping you get through this, instead of trying to avoid it by using the cutting or whatever it is to deal with it. Because at the end of the day, those scars are a lot to deal with, and I've seen people with many scars, and at the end of the day, they're still dealing with the pain. They haven't gotten to the solution of it. So, you know, self-harm isn't necessarily a sign that somebody is thinking about suicide, but it definitely means that they're going through something, or certain things are triggering them to the point where they feel like they have to engage in the cutting. And, you know, some people are very good with hiding it, but the more visible signs when it comes to cutting is usually people will use, you know, their wrist, they'll use their forearm, they'll use their thighs, you know, so people can't see. So if you have loved ones that you feel like are engaging, those are usually the places that they will use. So if you do feel like you see that, I wouldn't necessarily call them out about it, but I would try and see if I can have a conversation like, hey, what can I do? What resources do you need? How can we help you? Because at the end of the day, this is something that could possibly lead to you not being here anymore. If someone wants to die by suicide, there is nothing that can be done to stop them. This is not true, you know? A lot of the people, like I said before, that are suicidal are not 100% decided on dying. You know, well, like I've said before, if somebody wants to die by suicide or, you know, engage in those things, they will do it without telling people. A lot of the times when people don't know and they're having these suicidal thoughts, it takes them a while to get there, and they will reach out to people or do other things in the meantime to be able to figure out what they want to do, because they're either not ready, they're having second doubts, or in general, they care about the people that are around them, and that's what's holding them to still be here. So no, if someone wants to die by suicide, there is something that we can do to stop them. We can help them, we can support them, we can help them figure out a solution, because 9 times out of 10, a lot of times when people are dealing with having these suicidal thoughts, it's usually what is going on around them, and a lot of times we have to let them know that this is something that is happening right now, but you won't be here forever, right? Everybody knows that if somebody wants to do something, they're going to do it. We can't make someone do something, but we can at least put in the effort to show them that we care and that we can support them. Because at the end of the day, that's what somebody really needs, is the support, not the judgment that comes with whatever it is that they're going through. Another one that I usually hear is, once someone has thoughts of suicide, those thoughts will always be there. And that's not necessarily true. There are people who will be on the brink of suicide, get the help that they need, get the medication, whatever it is to help, and then they're able to get through that time in their life, right? Like I've said before, a lot of it is circumstantial. A lot of times it has to do with their environment, it has to do with the situation that they're in. And a lot of times people can't see the light until they actually step out of that situation. They're like, wow, I'm doing way better, right? But it takes a lot for them to get there, and the only way for them to get there is for them to use the resources that they have around them. So yes, someone who has thoughts about suicide, it can leave their mind and they can live a happy life without having those thoughts, but it is going to take a lot of work, it is going to take a lot of resources for them to get there, but it's not impossible. The other one that I hear also is, if someone is suicidal, it is my job to persuade them to stay alive. Like I've said before, if somebody wants to do something, they're going to go ahead and do it. And that's in all aspects. You know, if you really put your mind into something, you're going to go ahead and do it, whether somebody tells you right or wrong or whatever the case may be, right? The most important thing that you can do is talk with them, right? And try to figure out where they're at. You might not be the right person to help them get to the point of feeling better, but I think in that moment, just having someone to talk to is very important. When it comes to their thoughts, you're not responsible for anyone except for yourself. Putting that burden on yourself that you are the person that is supposed to help someone not die by suicide is going to be very taxing for yourself, and it's not your responsibility at the end of the day. But it is very important that you show the support to this person and let them know that you are here to at least support them and hear their thoughts, and maybe point them to the right person that's able to deal with that. And that's why us as counselors and professionals are here. We went to school and we studied this thing, and we are working for these people to help them feel better, right? At the end of the day, this is what we want to do. We want people to be here. We want them to be happy. We want them to live their best life. And it's not up to you or anybody else in a family or a friend to be responsible to persuade somebody to stay here, right? Because sometimes a lot of the things that we might say to someone is actually more detrimental than to actually be helping them. So it's important that we recognize that we won't be the problem solvers, but we can at least be there as support and then be able to point them in the right direction. And the last one that I want to get into is depression and suicide are always linked. You know, many people with depression don't think about suicide. You know, many people that die by suicide without having depression. You know, when it comes to depression, it shows up in different ways for different people. There are people who have depression and they're not able to get out of bed. You know, they are not able to take care of themselves in the sense that they're not taking a shower and stuff like that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't want to be here in the sense that they want to die by suicide. It's just a lot for them to deal with, and they would rather just lie around and not want to do anything, because it's too much effort to think about doing anything, even the simplest task of making yourself something to eat or just getting yourself ready for the day. it doesn't necessarily mean that those two things are linked, right? Somebody could be really going through severe depression, but they don't necessarily not want to be here. They just don't know what to do with that. And this is where it's important to implement a professional so that someone can talk to them, but then also they might need medication. You know, I know a lot of people have a stigma around medication and they don't want to be put on medication, but there are some mental health diagnoses that need medication in order for people to be stabilized, right? In order for people to feel better. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be on medication for the rest of your life. And I say this to my clients all the time. Just because you're on medication now doesn't mean you have to be on medication forever, but you do need to put in the work in the sense of trying to figure out what is going to work for you, so that if you're ever going through this thing again or you're feeling those emotions, you know what coping strategies and what resources are going to help you, so that you don't have to rely on the medication. You can take medication temporarily to help with the anxiety and to help with the thoughts, but eventually you're going to have to learn how to cope with that, in order for you to get through it. You know, there might be some people who have to be on medication long term, but ideally, for me, I would just rather people learn how to deal with what's going on and not have the medication be their crutch. Especially in therapy, just in general, I always emphasize to people that, you know, at the end of the day, I'm not going to be here forever, and I want you to be able to do things on your own. And that comes with being able to cope with the things that you are going through. And this is why therapy is important, that you learn and you talk to someone and they give you those tools, because it's not easy for you to come up with those things yourself. And the people in your life, your family and your friends, are not responsible for that, and they also might not know themselves, and that's a lot for them to deal with. So it's important to use your resources and for you to just acknowledge what is going on and to be able to seek the help so that you can get the strategies and, you know, the medication or whatever it is that you need, so that you can eventually just live the life that you essentially want to live, you know, without dealing with these issues. Because at the end of the day, even though you have anxiety, high anxiety now, and you know, you get the medication and it lowers, anxiety is always something that's going to happen. It's a human emotion, but we want to learn how to work through it so that it's not always as painful or as hard to deal with on a regular basis like it is right now. So I hope with this topic it cleared up some things for some people when it comes to myths. I just wanted to, you know, go through some things, not go into depth, because I know this topic can be a little triggering, but it is important to talk about. So I just wanted people to be aware and to just be educated and to know that these myths are not true, and for us to know what to do in these type of situations and not put the whole entire burden on ourselves, right? Because in actuality, these are things that are actually happening, and they're happening to people, especially young people, at a rapid basis. And, you know, especially with the influence that we have now with social media and just life in general, we want people to be aware of their resources and understand that even though you're going through this right now, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be going through it forever. And there are resources out there that are able to help you get through it, right? I just want to thank you guys for tuning into another episode of Level Up Your Mental. Please let me know if there's any other topics that you guys would like me to talk about. Please join in on the conversation in the comment section, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.